Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Black Hat MIA. Now, I do hope you're all sitting comfortably and are suitably excited for what is set to be an incredibly exciting, insightful, informative, eye-opening, and of course, fun few days. Now, I should probably start by introducing myself. I'm going to hazard a guess here and say that most of you don't know who I am. My name is Lucy Hedges. I'm the technology editor for the Metro newspaper in the UK, and someone who you might occasionally see talking tech and travel on the BBC. Now, as a technology journalist for one of the biggest newspapers in the UK, and someone who covers the multifaceted world of cybersecurity in its many, many forms, I am really excited to be here and share the stage with international experts from the cybersecurity community and learn from some of the greatest minds in the industry, and no doubt have my mind blown at the same time as well. Now, as the cybersecurity sector continues to rapidly develop and the threats and challenges it faces worldwide continue to grow at such a fast and vertiginous pace in today's highly digitized economy, it's now more important than ever to create a global stage to discuss all things cybersecurity and, of course, strengthen our knowledge to protect against cyber criminals. You know, because a distinct lack of awareness and discourse, of course, contributes to the growth in attacks. Now, through Black Hat, the private and public sector have an opportunity, a real opportunity here to collaborate, address this issue of national and regional importance, and develop strategies that mitigate risk. Now, as the most respected international security event series on the international scale, Black Hat is on hand to provide the security community with the latest, most technical, relevant, and cutting-edge research, development, and trends as the world's leading hackers and cybersecurity professionals all descend into Riyadh. Now, this three-day event aims to bring together some of the world's leading InfoSec speakers and specialists, global CISOs from front-page companies, elite and famous ethical hackers, and Black Hat-approved trainers. So the idea here is to educate and empower the global InfoSec community while helping it thrive through real business opportunities, create a vital hub for game-changing cybersecurity training, trends, and the most exciting developments. Now, with around 30,000 attendees expected and more than 250 exhibitors to fill the halls of the Riyadh Front Exhibition Center, Black Hat MIA is the biggest cybersecurity event in the Middle East and Northern Africa, and it's the most influential. So therefore, this is an incredible achievement for the region. And we have a lot going on over the next 3 days. We have hundreds of vendors ranging from the world famous all the way to niche startups who have set up their stands to show off their cutting edge services and products. Headline security vulnerabilities will be exploited, new tools demonstrated, and breaking new intelligence about InfoSec will of course be shared. Developers will also share their open source programs and tools to help sharpen those cybersecurity skills. And on this stage, you can expect bespoke coaching and sector-leading presentations by some of the world's leading InfoSec thought leaders and experts, all designed to ultimately inspire the Middle East's growing cybersecurity community. Now, I do not need to tell you that this event and hosting Black Hat in the region for the first time is of extreme national and global importance. And it really is set to be an incredible 3 days. So, on that note, are you ready to get started and get the largest cybersecurity event in the region started? Yes, energy, that's what I like to hear. Okay, so once again, welcome to Black Hat MIA.
They can take down resources you thought they couldn't. Stealing our identity and financial security. standing in the way of justice. Watching our loved ones disrupting markets and even obstructing critical care. Lost the battle? Or has it just begun?
Whoa, how epic was that video? I mean, the lights, the sound, bringing that cinematic feel. I don't know about you guys, but I am now really pumped for this event. I think it did a great job of really capturing the essence of what this event is all about. So on that note, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the stage His Excellency Advisor Taqi Al-Sheikh, Chairman of the General Entertainment Authority. Thank you.
هذا يشتغل؟ إذا هذا تمام خلونا على هذا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب السمو والمعالي والسعادة، أهلا ومرحبا بكم وبجميع الحاضرين معنا في فعالية بلاك هات التي أعتبرها واحدة من أهم فعاليات موسم الرياض 2022. وبكل سرور نفتتح اليوم أكبر فعالية من نوعها على هذا المستوى في المنطقة، والتي تعزز من مكانة المملكة في المجال الرقمي وتقنية المعلومات. ونسعد باستضافتها من لاس فيغاس في عاصمتنا الحبيبة في موسم الرياض، كل هذا بدعم مولاي خادم الحرمين الشريفين الملك سلمان بن عبد العزيز وتوجيه قائدنا وملهمنا سمو سيدي ولي العهد الأمير محمد بن سلمان حفظهم الله. هذه الفعالية المتخصصة في مجال التقنية والابتكار تأتي ضمن جهود تحقيق مستهدفات رؤية 2030 العظيمة. وفي بلاك هات سنرى مئات من الشباب السعودي على مستوى من الكفاءة والخبرة يتنافسون مع نظرائهم من 35 دولة في أكبر مسابقة من نوعها على مستوى العالم. وهذا هو الاستثمار في شباب الوطن. والعمل في جذب الفعاليات العالمية لدولتنا العزيزة نعتبره استثماراً مهماً سواء على المستوى الاقتصادي أو الترفيهي. الترفيه في المملكة العربية السعودية أصبح محط أنظار العالم، ويضم فعاليات عالمية في مختلف المجالات، حتى أصبحت السعودية واجهة ترفيهية تتنافس بكل قوة عالميا في استقطاب أهم وأكبر الفعاليات. موسم الرياض الآن شعلة كبرى في المنطقة بفعالياته المتميزة التي تمثل شعاره هذه السنة فوق الخيال. أتمنى أن تستمتعون معنا بهذه الفعالية التي أتشرف شخصياً وكل حماس لمتابعتها والتفاعل مع منافساتها، وأشكر كل القائمين عليها وأخوي فيصل وكل المسؤولين، وأهلاً وسهلاً فيكم وشكراً. الفعالية الوحيدة يا فيصل اللي ما أدخلها بجوالي، أخاف.
A fantastic keynote speech to kick the day off right. So now it's time for our opening remarks. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Faisal Al-Khamisi, Chairman of the Saudi Federation for Cybersecurity, Programming and Drones.
Highnesses, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I still remember well the words of my friend Steve Wiley, President of Black Hat, who said at the same venue, the same time last year, that Riyadh achieved in 1 year what took others 20 years to achieve. Steve was right about that. And today he and his amazing team are with us again. And I think his words are even truer now, as Riyadh has emerged as the major tech hub, a city of great opportunity, one of the rare places on earth where remarkable achievements can be made. We have emerged as the region's tech leaders because we are a nation that is passionate about knowledge, a nation that is young, a nation that is ambitious, a nation with clear vision, a nation led by Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz. Last year, we launched ATHAC. It was its launch, the largest cybersecurity event in 2021. We wanted to prove to our friends at Black Hat in San Francisco that Saudi Arabia is ready to be a global events hub, capable of hosting and launching some of the most renowned IPs and growing them larger than anywhere else in the region and in some cases, the world. And so, deciding to lift our eyes from the launch event, we created a partnership with Riyadh Season and Informa to create Black Hat Middle East, to grow from a regional powerhouse to a global IP with the aim to be a firmly recognized one of the top cyber events worldwide. Welcome to Black Hat, Middle East and Africa. An event that would not have been possible without the extraordinary support of His Excellency Turki al-Sheikh Abu Nasser, under the umbrella of Riyadh Season. And all our sponsors, especially the strategic sponsors, STC, Sirar STC, NEOM, Cisco, IBM, Spire Solutions, and Trend Micro. And so the theme of this short speech is growth. Growing from a new brand to the most iconic cyber event brand out there. Growing from a regional show to an international show. And growing in many other measurables too. And so to conclude, I think that this week's Black Hat will show that Saudi Arabia is not just a place to launch large events, but a place that makes global IPs flourish, that can sustain them and scale them as nowhere else. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faisal. Some really notable achievements for the region there. And I definitely agree that Saudi, the region, is certainly ready to be taken seriously as a global events hub for cybersecurity. I mean, this event is just testament to that. Okay, so we're not done with our opening remarks. For our Black Hat opening remarks, please welcome to the stage Steve Wiley, Vice President for Cybersecurity Market Group and Informa Tech. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Your Excellencies, and to all of you here this week. I have the privilege of running all of the Black Hat events around the world, and it is such an honor for me to be here this week with all of you as we launch Black Hat Middle East and Africa. And how great is it that we are here this year and that this event is part of Riyadh Season. Very excited about that. I was here last year, my first time here was last year, attending the ATHAC event. And I was so impressed to see such a vibrant cybersecurity community here. The cyber community is absolutely thriving, which was great to see. And quite frankly, this gave us the confidence this year to rebrand this event as Black Hat Middle East and Africa. This is actually happening at an interesting time for us. This past summer, Black Hat celebrated its 25th year. And with that, I've been thinking a little bit about, well, what is it that has allowed for Black Hat to continue to thrive and to grow over those 25 years? And very simply, Black Hat, first and foremost, is a community conference. So even as the event has been growing and scaling, it has always maintained a close connection to the very important research coming from the cybersecurity community. People like all of you, people that speak at the Black Hat events around the world. And over time, Black Hat also established its own role within the cybersecurity community, and that was very simply to provide the platform, to provide the stage for groundbreaking research to be unveiled to the cybersecurity community and to the world at large. So I think my message for us all as we kick off the event this week is that I'm just so very excited with what this event will become. I look forward to us continuing to build on that legacy that Black Hat has with this event here in Riyadh. And as we kick off the event this week, I'm also very grateful. So I would like to thank, of course, all of our sponsors, Your Excellencies, for supporting this event. And I would also like to thank our partners. We heard from Faisal Al-Khamisi with the Saudi Federation. He's been an outstanding partner for us in launching @Hack and rebranding the event to Black Hat MEA. And of course, I'd also like to thank His Excellency Advisor Turki Al-Sheikh, who is chairman of the General Attainment Authority, both of whom have helped us to create another world-class Black Hat event. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Some really powerful statements there just about how important it is for this event to take place here in the region. So thank you so much for your opening remarks and keynotes. Now, on that note, I am incredibly excited to introduce our next speaker. He is a renowned cybercrime and fraud prevention expert, best-selling author and subject of the movie Catch Me If You Can, who's going to speak about identity theft and simple strategies to protect against cyber criminals. I am, of course, talking about Frank Abagnale, who will take you through an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at how identity theft works and why we need more than just passwords for maximum security, especially in today's digital world. So please put your hands together for Frank Abagnale. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you in Saudi Arabia for Black Hat MEA. I'm going to take you through a very fast-paced program, cover a lot of subjects in a very short period of time. I hope it will give you information not only to protect your country or business, but your family and your children as well. I have been teaching at the FBI Academy for over 46 years. I've had the opportunity to teach 2 generations of FBI agents and, of course, conducted more than 3,000 seminars around the world during my career. Never on such an amazing stage as this, truly the most beautiful stage I've been on in my 46-year career. And during that time, of course, thank you. During that time, I have learned a lot of things, and one of the things is my philosophy, which is based on 3 points: prevention, verification, and education. Prevention, because once you lose your money, you will probably never get your money back. They may arrest the person, they may convict the person, they may send them to jail, but it is not likely you'll get your money back. If you make it easy for someone to steal from you, it's unfortunate, but someone will. We have a lot of great technology in the world, but if companies and governments don't use it, then it is worthless and just opportunities for criminals. In the United States, we have seen more than $110 billion of court-ordered restitution that is still outstanding today. 91% of that money will never be collected. Verification, because today anything can be replicated, duplicated, counterfeited, deep fake. So before you part with any money or you part with any information, you absolutely need to know who's on the other end of that device. And finally, education. Education is the most powerful tool to fighting crime. If I can explain to you how the crime or the scam works, you understand it, you will not fall victim to that crime. And of course, all of that money that comes out around the world from all of these types of crimes, fraud, identity theft, counterfeiting, all of this returns back to us in the form of narcotics and weapons and terrorism and human trafficking, child pornography. So even when we put a small dent in that number, we save a lot of human misery as well. I have written 3 books on identity theft. I started writing about identity theft in the 1980s, before very few people were talking about it. And back in those days, there were identity thieves, but it took a lot of work, took a lot of research, and because criminals are basically lazy, many of them didn't commit the crime. Today, technology has changed all of that. Technology breeds crime. It always has, and it always will. And there'll always be people willing to use technology in a negative, self-serving way. We have seen a 73% increase in the United States in identity theft since the pandemic began, and we continue to see those numbers rise again in 2022. And of course, we have a victim in the United States every 2 seconds of this crime, a crime that has now become worldwide because it is simplistic, it is easy to do, and anyone can do this crime with a very limited amount of resources and time. In the world in 2018, there were 3.6 billion identity records that were compromised. More than 14 billion identity records are available today on the dark web. That means probably everyone in this room, including myself, has already had their identity compromised. It's a question of would they ever use your identity. And of course, when we go back and look at all the breaches, and we go back to 2004, and in the first segment of breaches, the first 6 years, we look at the size of the companies, the government agencies, the financial institutions, the corporations, and then we move on to the next period till 2016. Bigger companies, more data taken, more information compromised, to where we are today with Marriott Hotels, Capital One Bank, Twitter, Facebook. Every day there are breaches, some we hear about, some we never hear about. And of course, during the pandemic, just in that 2-year period of time, we had more breaches than all the breaches put together since 2004. Now, I make my home in Charleston, South Carolina. A few years ago, someone hacked into our state tax revenue office and stole 3.8 million tax returns of the citizens of South Carolina. That was everyone, including myself. That meant they had their Social Security number, they had their wife's Social Security number, they had their children who were listed as a dependents, their Social Security number, their earnings. When the incident occurred, our state tax revenue office said we did absolutely nothing wrong. My comment then was that would absolutely, literally be impossible. Every breach occurs, every single breach occurs because someone in that company did something they weren't supposed to do, or someone in that company failed to do something they were supposed to do. Hackers do not cause breaches. Hackers only look for opportunities and open doors. In the case of South Carolina, after investigation, it was determined an employee took home a laptop they weren't supposed to take home. They opened it in an unrestricted environment, and the hacker got 3.8 million tax returns. Our governor of the state was Nikki Haley. At the time, the governor ordered that every person in the state be provided 1 year of credit monitoring service, and the state would pay the fee. I didn't know the governor, but I sent her a letter and told her that would be a waste of the taxpayers' money and the waste of the taxpayers' time. People who steal mass data warehouse that data, typically for 3 to 4 years before they ever put it back out into the marketplace. So 1 year of credit monitoring, 2 years of credit monitoring, 3 years of credit monitoring, basically kind of worthless. In the case of South Carolina, it was 4 years later before people started to see their bank accounts, credit cards, and their identities being misused. When we look on the dark web today, these are the current prices for pieces of information being sold on the dark web. So when you put those dollar amounts together, you see that it is a very, very profitable business for criminals who deal in selling information and selling data. I don't like to keep a old stat on my deck, but I keep this one from 2012. This was a study done in the United States by Carnegie Mellon. They went out to 50 states over a period of 3 years to interview 40,000 children under the age of 18. Asked the child if they've ever had their identity stolen. When they published a survey 3 years later, more than 10% of the children had had their identities stolen. When you go on the dark web and they're selling the identity of a 62-year-old multi-millionaire who owns shopping malls, office buildings, hotels, and you look what they sell the identity for, and then you slide over and look at a 14-year-old boy and notice that the price is double, sometimes triple. That's because the 14-year-old boy has no identity. The 14-year-old boy has no credit. And for the next several years, I can become the 14-year-old boy without anyone ever knowing I stole that child's identity. And if I can get the identity of a newborn child coming out of the hospital by their date of birth, their social security number, their name, I can become that child for 18, 20 years before anyone would ever know that I stole that child's identity. And so today, identity theft of children is a big concern of mine. In my books, I've written about it for years, but I'm happy to say that journalists around the world have started to realize that that is a very serious problem. In the old days, they used to go down and look at the death records, and they got a copy of a death certificate. Then they went over and got a copy of the birth certificate of the person who died because they didn't crisscross deaths with births. Once they had the birth certificate, they opened a bank account and got a driver's license. Then they got a credit card, and they established an identity. But that took a lot of time, a lot of legwork, a lot of research, so very few criminals did it. Today, I can do the same thing in my kitchen with a cup of coffee, in my pajamas, with a laptop in China, India, Russia, Jamaica, in a matter of about 3 minutes. That's the difference between 50 years ago and today. Ransomware. We in the United States had 2,500 cases of ransomware. More than $350 million was paid out by companies in cryptocurrency for being victims of ransomware. It is very simple. As long as there's cryptocurrency, there will be ransomware. You cannot have ransomware if you didn't have cryptocurrency. So as long as there is cryptocurrency, we will continue to have ransomware. I have probably looked at over 15,000 phishing emails in my career. And up until a couple of years ago, they were always very easy to spot. Misdirection, poor spelling, poor grammar. Not so much anymore. So I'd like to share just two with you. One, ironically, is a technology company in Southern California with 4,000 employees. It is supposedly an email from the CEO of the company to the CFO of the company, and it simply read, "Good morning, Jeff. Wonderful dinner at your home last night. Please thank your wife, Helen, for me. My wife, Susan, and I truly enjoyed your company. As I mentioned to you over dinner, I'm traveling this week till Nashville, Tennessee to attend a conference, so I will be out of the office till next Monday. I forgot to mention to you that I need you to wire these funds this morning for me to our client. Here's the information, signed Robert." Well, there's a picture of the CEO on Facebook, picture of his wife, his children, their names. There's a picture of the CFO on Facebook, his wife, his children, their names. And of course, when he said he was going to the conference 2 months earlier, he said on Facebook he would be attending the conference and how long they would be there. They're taking information from social media in real time and converting it into a phishing email. So exact and so precise. The other one was simply someone saying to their girlfriend, "Wonderful lunch today, we need to do it more often. I hope you and your husband Randy have a great time at Disney World. When you get back, please give me a call and we'll do lunch again. By the way, I saw this on YouTube, thought you would enjoy it. Here's the link." Well, she already said she was going to lunch with her friend. She already has a picture of a husband and family on Facebook. She already said they were going to Disney World. Again, they're taking information in real time and converting that into a very, very convincing email. And phishing emails are nothing more than social engineering. And the fact is, there is no technology, there never will be any technology, including AI, that can defeat social engineering. You can only defeat social engineering through education. You have to educate the individual that they are being socially engineered, so that when I call the bank, I can turn the conversation around to whether I am gathering information rather than getting information. And that comes through education. Fortunately, most people are honest, and because they're honest, they don't have a deceptive mind, so they have no idea they're being socially engineered. I could go in any company in the world, any company, whether it be a Fortune 100, a Fortune 500, or Frank's Plumbing Shop with 12 employees, and I'll find the same soft spots. There are soft spots everywhere. I can go in any building around the world, and on every floor, I'll find a soft spot, an entry point, an opportunity for a hacker, an open door. And of course, even in your own home, you have a refrigerator that tells you how much milk is in it. You have a thermostat you control from thousands of miles away. You have cameras around your house, so when you leave, you can go on your iPhone and look at your property. You have a device you talk to and ask, "What's the weather today? Order me this from Amazon." All of those devices can be switched, manipulated, so that I can hear everything you say in your house, see everything you say in your house. They are weak spots. You see, we develop a lot of technology around the world, but unfortunately, we very rarely vet that technology. We're so quick to get the technology out in the market because of return on investment, because the marketing people say it has to be out by Christmas, that no one ever stops and asks the question, how would someone misuse this technology? We're going to have to do a much better job of building security into our technology. Otherwise, we just make more opportunities for criminals to rob from around the world. Now, there is no foolproof system. If you believe you have a foolproof system, then you have failed to take into consideration the creativity of fools. But I can make something so difficult, it would be like asking you to move the Empire State Building over 2 blocks in 2 days. And that's what we do when we build good security. I hate passwords. Every book I've ever written, I said I hate passwords. Passwords are for tree houses. They were invented in 1964 when I was 16 years old, before I did any of the things I did. I am 74 years old, and we are still using passwords. How is that possible when we know that 63% of network intrusions are compromised user passwords? Colonial Pipeline cut down half the United States with simply a compromised password. 81% of hacking-related breaches are weak or stolen passwords. And 579 password attacks happen every single second of every day, or 18 billion hacks a year. If we take the 3 largest banks in the United States, just the 3 largest banks, they spend over $100 million a year just resetting passwords in their call center at $70 a reset. Why are we still using passwords? Well, I'm glad to say that passwords are going away. This year, Microsoft, Google, and Apple are going to install pass keys, every Apple phone in the world, by the end of this year. That'll enable people to use the passkey technology and get away from using the simple password or memorizing passwords. One bank in the United States, the second largest bank in America, vetted that technology for 1 year in opening new accounts at their bank. When the year was over, that bank said they saved them $70 million in no password technology just in opening new accounts at the bank that they would have lost to fraud. And of course, that technology today is coming very quickly, where you will simply use your phone to identify yourself, whether you're calling the bank, you're using the ATM machine, no card, no password, you won't touch the screen, you'll simply use your phone to identify who you are. I'm not on social media. I've never been on social media. I'm not on LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter. I do believe that someday, probably not in my lifetime, we'll realize that social media was a bad experiment. But in the meantime, I remind young people all the time, if you tell me where you were born and your date of birth on Facebook, that's 98% of the information I need to steal your identity. Identity thieves use 3 keys. You just gave them 2. So I remind young people, you never, ever want to state on social media where you were born and your date of birth, or you might as well say, come steal my identity. Of course, we do a lot more on social media. We tell people a lot of other things. I probably have about 10 apps on my phone. That's all. But we go up and sign up for apps without ever paying much attention to them. So a couple of years ago, there was FaceApp. And FaceApp said, show me a picture of you at 16, and I'll show you what you look like when you're 30, and what you look like when you're 60. There was a little agreement, a contract, but it was free, so you just script through it because it was tiny print, very long, and then you said, I agreed. 80 million Americans signed up for that app, but the app says that it's basically from Russia, and that app takes all privilege and rights in this paragraph away from the customer who signed up for that app, which translates to the fact that today the Russians have 80 million Americans' biometrics. They know what that boy looks like at 16, and when he goes in the military at 25, they'll know what he looks like at 25. And that won't even get into TikTok and all of the things and the problems and the issues that TikTok, a Chinese app, causes. 70% of employees in the United States said they review people's social media sites before they hire them. And 54% of them make decisions or reject that application basically on what they saw. Yes, if the FBI was going to hire you tomorrow and there's a picture of you on social media nude on a beach with a bunch of drug paraphernalia all over your body and wine bottles and whiskey bottles, no, they're probably not going to hire you. If you're 14 and you say a racial slur, someone's going to read it when you're 21. So today I remind young people what you say on Facebook stays on Facebook. You can erase it, you can delete it, you can close your account. What goes up in the cloud comes down from the cloud. So I tell young people, before you post a picture, before you make a statement, ask yourself, do you want someone to see that 5 years from now, 10 years from now? 2.7 billion hits, that's what Facebook gets every day around the world. I like this hotel, I like this car service, I like this airline. They compile that information, and within 6 months they know your gender, your age, your sexual orientation, your voting record, your IQ, your religion, your politics, whether you smoke, whether you use drugs, whether you use alcohol. Why would you want anyone to know all those things about you? You see, we complain a lot about people stealing our identity. In the meantime, we keep telling people more and more about ourselves. In the old days, we had a chat room. You sat in front of a computer screen, and it went by at a slow pace and sold you information. Driver's license, mother's maiden name, date of birth, social security number, bank account numbers, credit card numbers, and each line item was of $5, $10. Now, of course, we have the dark web. Technology constantly changes everything, and just another way of selling, storing information. Now, I'd be remiss to tell you how I protect my own identity, and basically, I shred everything, because what you believe to be worthless is of great value to someone else. So there are literally 3 shredders built in the world. Many manufacturers, Office Depots, Staples, Fellows, but 3 types. There's a straight shredder called a ribbon shredder. It cuts paper up and down. Those are put back together in less than 30 minutes. So that would be a waste of time and energy. There are crisscross shredders. They cut paper down to a little rectangular box like so, but there's a software called ePuzzler that puts those back together in a very short period of time. So when I buy a shredder, it's not who made it, it's what type is it. And I'm looking for the word security, micro, cut shredder. That's a shredder that turns paper into confetti, about the size of a piece of rice. There is no technology to put it back together, and they're the same price as the other shredders. So it is buying the right tool to do the right job. In America, they allow me to freeze my credit, so no one can see my credit without my permission. Not the bank, not the insurance company, not the health company, no one. And that is a good thing. Anyone from 16 years of age to older can freeze their credit. There are credit monitoring services to monitor your credit. I like it more because I can look at my credit 20 times a day on my laptop and see what my credit report says, that if someone's making an inquiry on my credit, I can see that. I don't write a lot of checks anymore because these types of instruments have so much information on them. Your name and address, your bank's name and address, your account number at the bank, your routing number into the account. That is basically your wiring instructions, your signature on the signature card at the bank. And then the clerk has sometimes written down your license number and your date of birth on that document. So I'm very careful of what I write today. Debit versus credit. As you've seen many times over the years, I've written about this, I've talked about it. I don't own a debit card. A long time ago, I asked myself a simple question: what is the safest form of payment that exists? And the answer is credit card. Not credit debit card, credit card. Visa, MasterCard, American Express. Every day of my life, I spend the credit card company's money. I don't spend my money. No one knows where my money is because no one sees my money. I go to the grocery store, my credit card. Go to the dry cleaner, my credit card. Got on the plane to come, credit card. And I will do everything in my power to make sure no one sees my number, but if they do, and they charge $1 million on my account, by law, I have zero liability, no liability. If I buy something online and the camera comes to me broken, and the merchant says I'm not replacing it, my credit card company takes care of it. When I use a debit card, every time I use it, I'm exposing the money in my account. And when that money's gone, I have to fight to get that money back. So when I want to get cash from the bank, I only ask for an ATM card. And if I use any services like Venmo or Zelle, I only back that with a credit card. I do not back that with a bank account. I do not back that with a debit card. I back that only with a credit card so that if I lose my money, I have a resource to go recover my money from. I wrote this op-ed at the Government Wire. That's a newsletter that goes out to every federal agency in the United States. I wrote it in March of 2020 during the pandemic, and I was writing about the money that would be lost from the PPP loans and all of the government funding. Anytime the United States government puts money out, whether it be for a hurricane, national disaster, at least 10% of that money goes out the door to fraud. So the United States government gave $680 billion to 50 states and for unemployment insurance. And the first thing they told the state, you're not liable for any fraud. So the state had to go out and hire hundreds of people. People paid those charges without ever doing any investigation. By the time the pandemic was over, just that one, unemployment insurance, $48 billion in fraud. Fraudulent claims filed from people all over the world against the US government to the tune of $48 billion. And that's just unemployment insurance. That doesn't have anything to do with PPP loans, Medicare, and all the other government programs. In the United States, $37 billion a year is stolen from the elderly. people over 50. They lose their life savings. They lose their home. They lose their pension due to scams. And every day in the United States, 7 days a week, every single day, 10,000 Americans turn 65 years of age. During the pandemic, we saw those scams triple. And we saw romance scams triple, which caused me to write my last book called Scam Me If You Can. I donated all of the money from the book to AARP, which is an American Association of Retired People, so that they could help protect the elderly. In this book, 400 pages, I've talked every single scam there was. Scams against millennials, scams against seniors, Bitcoin scams, cryptocurrency scams, bank scams, insurance scams. Each one I explain the scam, what the scam artist says, and then at the end, a couple of questions so you understand and answer them as to you understand what I wrote. When I finished this book, it was amazing to me that what I found out was that millennials are scammed far more often than elderly folks. Only elderly folks lose more money because they have more money to lose. And when I finished the book, I realized that no matter how sophisticated the scam was, and I wrote about a lot of sophisticated scams, no matter how amateur the scam was, the grandparent scams, the sweepstakes scams, the IRS scams, no matter what it was, there were two red flags. And the scam could not work without one of the red flags popping up. And the first red flag is that I was going to ask for the money immediately, right this moment. You have to stay on the phone, get a green dot card, read me the number on the back. You have to give me your bank account, your credit card. You can't hang up the phone. It has to be right this second. That's a red flag. And the second red flag is at some point, I'm going to ask you for information. It might be a year later in a romance scam, but at some point, I'm going to ask you for some personal information. You don't know me. You never met me. You didn't solicit the email. You didn't solicit the phone call. You don't know who's on the other end of that line. So before you part with any money or you part with any information, you absolutely need to know who's on the other end of that line. On my website, I sell no products. I endorse no products. It is strictly an educational site. You will find 4 videos, each 3 minutes long, on the 4 most common scams around the world. If a person watches the video, they will understand the scam and they will not fall victim to the scam. And the last thing I would point out to you is when I wrote the book, I realized that the scam artist not only follows the headlines, but there are scam artists that what I refer to as putting people under the ether, which means that no matter what you say to them, they only believe the scam artist. So if the father, the mother, the daughter is saying to their mother, this is a scam, here's the proof, here's the police report, here's the newspaper articles, no, 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 you don't know what you're talking about, he's a good person. That's under the ether, and once people go under the ether, it is almost impossible to get them out. Every year I publish a 32-page booklet. It simply has everything in it, from forged checks, counterfeiting money, cybercrime, identity theft, any type of crime. It's up to date. You can see all the indexes down below on the front page. Anything you want to know right now, currently, today in 2022, is in there. It's free. All you have to do is go online. You can download it. If you want to edit it, you can edit some pages out you don't find useful. But you'll find a lot of information in there for your bookkeeper, your accountants, people who handle money and your finances as well. And my website is just my name, abagnale.com. It has been an honor and a pleasure to be with you this morning to kick off Black Hat MEA. Thank you for having me.
Frank, thank you so much. Incredibly eye-opening stuff there from someone incredibly well-versed in the cybersecurity field on both sides of the fence. So thank you for that. Some incredible stats, especially on passwords. You know, passwords is something I'm constantly telling my readers about. It's not enough. Whether or not they listen to me, I have no idea. Okay, so we've now got time for a couple of questions. Got a quick Q&A for you, Frank, if that's okay. Now, you talked a lot about innovative technology out there to help combat cybersecurity, but technology also breeds crime as well. It's almost this double-edged sword. How has technology changed crime from when you were doing it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, what I did 50 years ago as a teenage boy is 4,000 times easier today, because I didn't have all the technology you see here. So for me to forge a check, I needed a printing press, color separations, negatives, plates, typesetting, and the skill to operate the press. Today, I open my laptop, I create a check in a few minutes, I go to the company's website, I capture their logo, I put it on the check, I make the check as fancy as I want, as many colors as I want, and unfortunately, we live in a too much information world, so if I call that company and ask their wiring instructions, they tell me where they bank and give me that information. If I call and ask to their corporate communications, they send me a copy of their annual report. And on page 3 is a signature of the chairman of the board, the CEO, the CFO, the treasurer, the controller, white glossy paper, black ink, camera-ready art. I scan it, I digitize it, put it on a check. I would have never believed it 50 years ago, but I can tell you what I did 50 years ago is now 4,000 times easier to do today.
Well, you mentioned during your talk that, cyber criminals these days, some of them can be a little bit lazy, but I guess back then there was no room for laziness. If you really wanted to do it, you had to go for it and really think outside the box and not rely on technology to help you, ultimately.
Yes, and I've had to learn everything. When I started teaching at the FBI Academy, it was all about counterfeit checks, counterfeit money. Cybercrime didn't exist. So I had to learn all of the things I learned over the 46 years. But the one thing I learned, and the reason I approach it in a totally different way than a cyber expert, is the criminal mind never changes. The method, the availability of the technology, that changes. But the mind of the criminal stays the same. So if you understand the mind of the criminal, you can figure out just about what the next thing they're going to do, how they're going to do it. No matter what technology exists, the methods remain the same.
Yeah. And finally, my last question for you, Frank. Talk to us about what was it that made you change from a life of crime to doing what you do today?
I know that people would like me to say that I was born again. I saw the light. A prison rehabilitated me. I don't think I was any different the person who went into prison as the person who came out of prison. However, I met my wife 46 years ago while working in a grocery store. I didn't have a dime to my name. I was on parole to my government. I told my wife about my background. I fell in love with her, and I eventually asked her to marry me. And against the wishes of her parents, she did. She changed my life. Everything I have today, everything that's happened to me in my life is because of my wife. I have 3 sons, one who is an FBI agent. I have 7 grandchildren, all because of that.
Frank, you're going to make me cry. That's an amazing, I wouldn't say end, it's just an amazing part of your incredible journey. And I know I speak for everyone here in this room. Thank you so much for taking the time to come here and share your story. It is one heck of a journey, I think you'll agree. Everyone, please give it up for Frank Abagnale.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so our next speaker is no stranger to the Black Hat stage. His name is Chris Roberts, Chief Information Security Officer for Boom Supersonic. Now, Chris is going to take us through why ticking all the right boxes and seemingly achieving compliance isn't always what it seems on the surface. And he's going to talk you through how you can reduce those risks in the digital realm. I've heard him speak before. This guy is incredibly passionate. You guys are in for a real treat. So I'm going to leave the stage to him. Please welcome Chris to the stage.
You're awesome. Thank you. Well, good morning. Actually, good afternoon. And welcome, everybody. Thank you very, very much for having me. We're going to have a little bit of fun. Frank was very nice and very civilized. I'm not so civilized. As I said, we have a warning on this one. The warning is because our industry needs a little bit of a change and a little bit of a kick. I'm looking to here for that to happen. Quick one. So very, very quickly, the About Me slide, the obligatory one. I'm currently causing chaos and mayhem, actually inside the aviation industry now. I'm a researcher. We're going to have some more talks on here and on the other stages. Some fun things we've been doing with camels in this country and some of the ships on the sea. Father to two-legged and four-legged, geek and a tinkerer, and a hacker. So a quick one. The agenda, the general conversation that we're going to have. We're going to start off nicely. You get a pat on the back and you get a thank you. But then we're going to have a deep conversation about why the hacker and the CISO is on stage and why we need to change. We'll have a conversation about audits and compliance, those very wonderful things that we all like and some of which need to probably go up in flames. Bit of a choice and some other bits. First though, and I hope I got this right, I have to say thank you. I have to say thank you not just to the conference for having me here, but also for the very simple fact that I turned up in Heathrow as I normally do with airplanes and caused a bit of chaos. And here was ridiculously amazing. The folks in here, the folks that are putting this conference on, and the folks that are actually hosting it, and everybody that was in the front row, pulled some strings and got me in. So for everybody there, thank you very, very much for that. Hugely so. So as I said, we're going to start nicely. Everybody gets a congratulations. Everybody gets a pat on the back. And you get that pat on the back because most of you who are inside organizations and CISOs and leadership have probably hit this tick list. You've got a security posture. You're sitting here going, we're in good shape. You've got all the systems. You've got good people, and you've put the proverbial tick in the box, which means you're all feeling good and nice and fluffy, and everything is wonderful. However, as we know, any time that a bunny rabbit is up on screen or is on the movies, the bunny gets it. This is reality for cybersecurity. The reality for this is because so many organizations, so many companies in our space focus on the larger organizations. As Frank talked about, we don't spend time talking about the humans. We don't spend a lot of time talking about the small to medium organizations. We don't spend much time helping. We'll talk about that one in a second. And unfortunately, we award ourselves awards. We sit there and we pat ourselves on the back. We pat ourselves on the back, but we still lose all of this data. That is a global number as to how much data we lose every single day. That's a lot of records. And we did it because we told everybody they had to put a tick in the box. We were good with that tick in the box. We were like, oh, you must put your tick in the box. And not only did we have to put a tick in the box, but we had to answer some simple questions. The very simple question that used to be the easy one, do you have a firewall? When we first started compliance, it was a simple tick in the box. Do you have a firewall? And everybody went, oh, absolutely. Yes, we have a firewall. They didn't ask the follow-on question, which is it out of the shrink wrap and turned on? That's the tricky one that we asked a few years later when we realized people didn't care about the tick in the box. So then we added more and more questions. We started asking people, have you taken it out? We didn't really ask them whether they configured it or built it. But then everybody decided that they had to have their own tick in the box. If you had credit cards, you had your own set of tick in the boxes. If you had human data, you had a set of tick in the boxes. If you dealt with government, you had other ticks in boxes that you had to deal with. And every single one of them telling me that they wanted something different. Every single one of them building an empire. We have empires from PCI, we have empires from HIPAA, healthcare information. We have empires in the government space. Everybody wants their own set of ticks in the boxes. And history has told us, empires fall eventually. Yet, our clients, the very people we are meant to be protecting, all they want to do is work. All they want to do is have us protect them. Yet all we manage to do is give them more intelligence, more options, more frameworks, more boxes, more certified people, and thousands of vendors to choose from. We, cybersecurity, had one job, and this country knows about that. It's the word protect. This country is family. This country looks at the figureheads of that family and goes, you are here to protect. Every single one of you should look in the mirror and go, my job is to protect my family, my community, not to make billionaires. Finance, something this country is known about for thousands of years. In all the time finance has been around, it has minted the equivalent of about 360 billionaires globally over its thousands of years. Cybersecurity, to Frank's point, in the 60s, we're only 3 behind. What happened to protect? And business is booming, unfortunately. The very opening statement that was here, which is we're at war. Is it the beginning of the war or are we in the middle of it? And then we look at how long it takes us now to find people, how long it takes us to go through a breach, how much work and how much effort it is for organizations to understand these breaches. And we realize how much those breaches are costing us. That number is this year. By 2025, they expect it to hit 10 to 11 trillion. Meanwhile, we've put more and more code out there. More and more systems, more and more architectures, more and more complexities, and we've done it on more platforms. We have made our own problems more complicated to solve. We've basically made the rod for our own back, unfortunately, which, when it comes to cybersecurity, gets summed up in one simple picture. Welcome to our industry. However, as the vendors will tell us, artificial intelligence will save us. It is going to look after us. It'll take care of us. Now, for those of you that have one of these things, an artificially intelligent robot, courtesy of iRobot, unfortunately, that's mine. Every single darn day it gets itself caught up in something. Or we have intelligence built into vehicle systems. And as we can continue to hear from the horn, and if you go down the other end, right at the far on the bottom end, where a lot of the security folks are, you'll find out that some of the sensors aren't in place. Or if you really want to have some fun, you can do what's known as adversarial research. This is where you can take a picture, you can modify half a dozen pixels, or in the case of the bottom one, you can modify the signal by 0.01%, and change the outcome completely. We don't have a fix for this. This is intelligence used against itself. Meanwhile, all the companies that we are meant to be protecting are simply asking for a tick in the darn box. And most of them have got to the point now where all we're doing, because we all have it in our companies, we have those computers out there that we're like, well, not sure what's going on. Now, when we put the tick in the box and we tell the companies that we've put the tick in the box, we then have to explain to them it doesn't make them secure. Because as we know, compliance is a good starting point, but it does not equate, especially when humans are involved, to security. And as we all see, the ticks in the boxes are there, but people are still getting breached. But we've told people, we keep telling them, it's out there all over the internet. The vendors tell them, get compliant, you'll be secure. As it says, it's a bit of a lie, unfortunately. And there's a lot of us that are trying to do this, which is kind of how we end up. We are meant to stop this. We've told people that we can stop this. We've explained to them if they spend all their money, we can stop this. But then we have to explain to them we can't. There is an argument at the moment to say all the technology that is necessary is there, yet we haven't implemented or integrated where we should do. And then we turn around and say you can't retaliate. We have to have that conversation with people and go, hey, I'm going to attack you in the digital world, but you don't know who I am or where I am. So how do we deal with that retaliatory conversation? Or, whoops, sorry, one too far. There we go. We have to then explain to them that the insurance that they bought has issues, that the organizations they're dealing with are going to have issues, which unfortunately means we get to this point. We have so many companies now that turn around and go, I don't know how to deal with this. We have confused the situation to a point where organizations are like, what the heck do we do? Because I got to put more ticks in boxes, or I have to charge more money because of the amount of ticks in boxes that I have to put in there, and all the conversations go around with it, and we're sitting there blaming everybody. I go to too many organizations where somebody blames security, or the network team, or the developers, or the software teams, or whoever built it or coded it. We're all in this together. This is something we should all be doing. Meanwhile, the very companies that we work with are sitting there, do I really have to put that tick in the box? Who's making me? Well, unfortunately, from an adversarial and an attacker's standpoint, we obviously are able to circumvent those ticks in the boxes. So we have to talk about choices. We have to talk about how we validate, how we trust, how we deal with this, and how we ask questions. Because we have to have the conversation, unfortunately, about how security is versus how it needs to change. How our conversations with each other and with everybody out there are some amazing vendors out there, but we have to have the conversation about how we ask them different questions and maybe hold them responsible. In other words, we have to accept some changes. Here's the first one. Stop lying to each other. Stop lying to yourselves. Stop telling people that they can be 100% secure. Stop telling people that it's hacker-proof. This conference is amazing because we have brought people from the cybersecurity community, the hacker community, the business community together. We're all in this together, which means we stop lying to each other and we start holding people accountable. Let's hold each other accountable. When you talk to a vendor, start asking them about the worst case scenario. Start asking them what happens if something occurs. What happens when the software goes in? What happens with the challenges? What happens in the worst case if I get breached? Are you next to me as a true partner, or are you going to start blaming somebody else? Now, the other part of this is we need to listen more. This is a big one. This comes not just from the vendor side on making an assumption, but also from us as we are talking with those partners and those vendors. Ooh, a little bit of feedback. We're talking with those partners and with those vendors. We have to basically listen. We have to take a moment to say, what are those vendors and those organizations talking to us about? How are they helping us? How are they helping the human in this situation? Not just the technology, but how is the human getting helped? Because at the end of the day, as Frank rightly pointed out, this industry that we're in is still a human-driven industry. I will still break into an organization because of the humans, because of how quickly and how easily we can circumvent the humans. But the problem then is, we only teach them once a year, twice a year, once a quarter. So how long does it take for us to get through to those humans, to have those conversations about change? The other challenge, we need to be better with our soft skills. And by that, I'm talking about the communication skills that we have, the cooperation. This is not a blame game, this is everybody. One thing about coming here is the life and the spirit. When you leave here and you walk out there, And especially if you go all the way down to the other end, where the CTF is, see how many young folks are there. See how many people have a thirst and a knowledge and a desire for this industry. And see how you can collaborate and cooperate with them. Bring them into this industry and help them. We need all the hands we can get, and we need good people with different mindsets. Another reason I'm on this stage is because there's a different mentality and a different driving force in this region. And you owe it to yourselves and each other to foster that and build it. Please. Let's talk about a different approach. Let's face it, when we go to do an assessment, there are companies out there that are going to tell you that they could do a security assessment. The way we currently do it is we walk up to a company and go, "Hi, I'd like to break into you. I'd like to penetrate you. I would like to bring Kali, the goddess of death and destruction, to break into your system. It's an operating system with security tools. Not only do I want to do that, I want to bring ponies and pineapples." As a company, they're confused. They don't know what the heck is going on. And yet in this region, you have probably the best way forward to open a conversation. In my neck of the woods, it's bring tea and biscuits. Over here, you have some amazing coffee. Why not open the conversation with a potential organization simply by talking with them? Simply by having a conversation about situations. Rather than breaking into somebody and showing their weaknesses, talk to them, do tabletop exercises, do simple ways and simple conversations. At the end of the day, somebody's still going to get eaten by the GRU. You can still have some fun with people, but you do it honorably. You do it in a collaborative and cooperative way. We also need to do it in a language that others understand. Now, this is ironic from an English guy standing on stage in front of an amazing audience. But we all have to stop speaking tech. Stop the acronyms. Start talking business. Start talking risk. Have conversations that others can understand, not that you're comfortable with. And, for goodness sakes, ask more questions. When you walk out there and you talk to those vendors and those suppliers, don't believe everything that they say. Ask more questions. And if you don't know the questions to ask, come and find me. I will give you 10 or 15 questions to ask every managed service provider, pen testing company, cloud organization, anybody that turns around and says they have artificial intelligence or machine language, I'll give you 20 questions. We have to challenge the very industry itself to change. Because it's going to take every single one of us to do it. In our community, we have something called DevSecOps. It's amazing. Development, security, and operations. It shouldn't have to exist. DevSecOps is nothing more than communication and collaboration with a new name. We should already be doing it. Why do we have to reinvent the name for it? We have to get better at talking with each other. Not to each other, but with each other. And you, as individuals, as heads of households, as a community, as a tribal nation, as an organization in this region that has built this. Remember, this is year 2. We're 1.5 year 2, and you've built this. Keep sharing with each other. Keep talking with each other. Keep helping each other. All the way down to the end there, on the right-hand side, there's a booth. And it's called 971sec. That is a community of hackers and researchers sharing information. Be part of that community. please. This region needs to show a better way. Think about it, you're U2 and you have all of this. Black Hat is 25, 26 years old. DEF CON, my first DEF CON was DEF CON 6, 20 plus years ago. We didn't have this. You have an amazing thing that's been built by the folks sitting there, the folks at the back, and everybody that's walking around out there. Learn from it, use it, and build it. Please show the rest of the bloody world that you can be better. I implore you. And do me a favor, lead the way for them, because they're kind of lost. Understand your surroundings. Another one of those situational awareness things. And the reason is because of all this. We have billions of devices. Frank talked about it briefly, how many devices in the home and how many systems that we have to deal with. We've got to do it better. So choose wisely. Again, as you are talking with the vendors and the suppliers out there, ask the questions, choose them, challenge them. Because here's what they'll sell you, and here's what they're going to tell you. We're looking after you 24 by 7 by 365, but unfortunately sometimes this is reality. Not only is that reality, so's this. That is a single pane of glass. It's useless. We can't do anything with this. Challenge them to make a difference. This is not what we want in security. I don't want sales and marketing people that cannot be honest. I don't want sales and marketing that do not have integrity. We have to be better. We have to get away from the baubles and blinky rubbish that we have, and we have to think differently. How many of you are inside organizations or working with companies that simply don't know where all of your assets are, that don't know what's on them, that don't know who has access to them, that don't know what their purpose is? Buying new technology doesn't fix that. Taking a step back and looking at it differently will help. Taking a look at how we can change our views on security, challenging what's out there. Because here's the thing, as Frank said, and a lot of you will hear recently, the late Sir Terry Pratchett put it perfectly. It's not a matter of if something happens, or if you get breached, or if something occurs. We know that 1,000,001 chance crops up 9 times out of 10. It is simply a matter of when and how much it's going to hurt. If the very first time you have tested your incident response planning is when you get breached, that's not cyber security. So in closing, the highest form of human excellence is to question oneself. Every single one of you, every single one of us needs to look in the mirror every morning and go, what am I doing to help protect in the digital realm? How am I helping those around me? How am I helping my people, my family, my tribe, my country? How am I helping my community to succeed? What can I do differently? Not who can I blame, but what can I do differently? Because as individuals, we will fail. We'll get picked off one by one. Together, we stand a chance of succeeding, and I mean together. You see what's been built here? It is bloody sodding amazing. I want to swear, but I'm trying to be respectful. It is absolutely amazing. Everybody here deserves credit for this, and it is flippin' brilliant. Take advantage of it, please. Now, thank you everybody for listening and hanging out. Please do something. Respectfully, thank you for having me here.
Chris, thank you so much. Do you know what, one of the things I love about Chris is that he takes something that is inherently incredibly serious, complex, multifaceted, but you have loads of fun with it as well. I think I giggled at least a few times, but it's still, you've imparted such serious knowledge.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
And some brilliant advice there from Chris. You know, we are all in this together, and it is time to stop sugarcoating things and really take accountability for when things do potentially go wrong. And that human versus technology conversation I always find quite fascinating. While technology is constantly changing, constantly evolving, and getting more sophisticated, if the humans behind it don't fully understand it or don't want to champion it, you're going to run into a little bit of trouble. So by asking yourself, what am I doing to help protect in the digital realm, is a very good place to start, and a great bit of advice there from Chris. Okay, so from Chris, we're moving on to our next presentation of the day. Now, Quinn Carman from the National Security Agency and an expert in cyber attacks, cyber defense, close access, and in social engineering will take the attacker's perspective. This is set to be a really interesting conversation, and he's going to showcase how gaining an adversarial perspective and understanding how they think is critical to securing your enterprise and business. So please welcome to the stage, Quinn Carman. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Well, I traveled a little bit to get here, but I couldn't be honestly more excited. I have been going to Black Hat, DEF CONs, and other cybersecurity conventions since the Alexis Park days for Black Hat. Back as a small operator, I started in the Air Force, actually, where I started as an operator. I came from running network security for a hospital, and thought that why not cut my pay in half, move to Kansas, and start hacking. And that's basically what I did, and it got me started. It's been a pretty interesting career. I have worked through both Air Force Red Teams for the United States, and then had the opportunity to come out to Maryland and work for the National Security Agency as on their Red Team. Started there running a team, and then moved my way up. Most recently had the honor of serving as chief of the NSA's Red Team, so I ran that organization before receiving the opportunity to move to actually Germany, of all places. So I'm out there now, no longer on the agency Red Team, but that is the bulk of my experience. So basically what I'm going to talk about today, kind of before we get started, are kind of a couple of key points. Number one, I feel it's very important that if you're running network defense, if you are responsible for defending an enterprise, a network, a building, whatever it may be, understanding how an attacker looks at these things is critical to that defense. If you don't know how it's going to be attacked, if you don't understand the vulnerabilities and kind of that way of looking at things, which is different. I was listening to Frank's talk just a minute ago, and I agree with everything he's saying. A lot of the tactics he employs in what he has done throughout the years is something that I've used and we have used on our teams to attack for network defense purposes, our own bases, network infrastructures, etc. The other thing, I also heard earlier about passwords. I too can't believe passwords are still in use. We abuse them constantly. They're a massive weakness. Anytime you're expecting a person to memorize 29 different passwords, it's going to be impossible and not something that we're going to be able to do. So with that on, I'd like to share that network perspective and kind of that adversarial look to what is actually a network defense mission. So that's the first thing. So the other is we're going to be talking a little bit during this session about leading these teams, interfacing, communication, and really it comes down to the human element of all this. We get into this line of work. I started this line of work because I thought it would be great to hack things. Also have done a lot of close access work. We call it close access, or CAT. That is the social engineering, the breaking into the buildings, and it's a lot of fun to run around in the middle of the night, secure military or business facilities, trying to break into them, see where the security is. It's pretty stressful most of the time, but it's a good time. But it's really, at the end of the day, the point I want to hammer home after this is that it's really the people that we take advantage of. So you can have all the network defense in the world, but unless you're building a culture, unless you are working on making sure that every person there, every computer is a part of that network defense and it's cohesive and everyone has that mindset, then you're not going to be successful at defending your enterprise. So that's really the important part. I'd like to get to this. So without further ado, I'll kind of start moving through this. See if this works here. All right, so a little bit about the NSA. I work, so most are familiar with the National Security Agency. I'm very proud to work there and represent the government agency here in Riyadh. This is a fantastic event, and we're very excited to be here. One of the biggest missions that we have at the agency is SIGINT. Signals intelligence. This isn't where I work, but this is what most people know of at the agency. This is what people most think of when it's capturing enemy information and trying to get that to the warfighters so that it can be used. And we can hopefully save lives and defend the nation and our allies. So that's the most common and most well-known part of the agency. However, a lot of people don't realize that we actually have a massive cybersecurity directorate. And that's where I've spent the bulk of my career here with the agency. And its method is to do exactly what you think it is. We work and partner with government agencies, other government entities, and try to help them with their cybersecurity. So that's a very, very important part of our mission at the NSA. And we feel that we're starting our initial focus here, as you see in the slide, is a defense industrial base. It's what we call. Those are all of our contractors and the people that we work with, and the government, the United States government, works with in order to conduct our operations and our missions. With all of that, that's one thing to take from the focus of the defense industrial base here. This highlights a key aspect of a lot of vulnerabilities that you have within businesses, in that if you might have a very secure enterprise yourself, but when you do business outside of that enterprise and you connect different networks, then you're only as secure as those networks to which you connect. And that's one thing that we're looking at very closely to make sure that all of our, not just the government networks are secure, but our industry partners are as well, so that we can maintain a secure global enterprise. So that's kind of what we do. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the other side of running a network engagement. So when we're looking at a business, whether it's an organization, whether we're doing close access work, whether we're doing any sort of hacking of an organization, then you really have to learn and see how we see things. And it's a very, very challenging thing. That sounds pretty easy. You just sit down, plug in, start hacking away, break into a building, make some fake keys, take pictures of badges, etc. But at the end of the day, that's what everyone shows up to work. That's what, when I joined, and why I think how most people get into this line of work, because they want to hack things, they want to break into buildings, they think that's a lot of fun, but it's easy to lose sight that this is a defensive mission. Our purpose is to leave that organization more secure than when we found it. And that's really, I think, the hard part of running these sorts of events. It's to engage and be able to communicate effectively those the vulnerabilities. To not just hack and break things is a challenge. So getting to that, when you have a team of operators and you're trying to attack an organization, they just want to hack, and that is great, and that's what we need them to do. However, it's very easy for them just to go and at the end of the day not take down all the critical pieces of information to communicate that to the network owners. Now, in that same line, if you take that team, these are incredibly intelligent people. They're very, very good at what they do. They're typically very successful at what they do. So if you don't keep them going in the right direction, that can also be a challenge. If you are on a penetration testing team, or if you're on a red team, it's easy to get sidetracked. It's easy to go and chase after the flashy lights and not really actually pay attention to what is critical. And I find that network defenders who own large enterprises have the same sort of challenges, in that it's difficult sometimes to identify what is critical to the organization, what needs to be defended, and from the attacker's perspective, what needs to be attacked. So these are challenges you must somehow overcome to keep your team going in the right directions. And now this is a big thing that's often overlooked, is there's a lot of legal and safety concerns, especially. So we're a government agency. We can only touch other government agencies and military organizations. The agency doesn't do any of this work outside of official approved channels, and then only against our own internal US government systems. So we don't do any of this with outside corporations, companies, whatnot. So we have the legal concerns, because whether you're doing this in the corporate world or whether you're doing this for government, technically every time you hack a network, that's not a legal thing to do. So you need to make sure all of that is done well and protected. That way your operators are safe and secure and they're not going to prison. Then of course there's safety, and this especially comes into play when we're doing close access work. I've had the enjoyment of going around. It sounds really great, running around the middle of the night, trying to break into facilities that are guarded by armed guards and dogs and people, military police with guns. That sounds pretty exciting until you're actually doing it. And it's a little nerve-wracking sometimes. So there's a lot of safety, a lot of training that goes into place, because you want to make sure that if a situation arises where you're caught, you want to make sure that you get out of there as safely as you can. It always hurts a little bit to get arrested, to be rolled up as we call it. However, it's good to get out of there without getting shot. That's kind of our main goal there. And then the products that you produce. It's very easy to attack a network, to red team it, to do a penetration test. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really, that's not the important part. The important part is what you deliver to the customer when you're done. If you don't tell them all of the details, then there's no point in you doing it in the first place. And that comes down to communication. Now, communication is a challenging thing. If you ever have a chance, go to YouTube, for example, and look up the McGurk effect, where I still watch that video occasionally to remind myself how something, just a simple piece of communication, can get misinterpreted because you're dealing a human to a human with different perspectives, and trying to come together on a common understanding is definitely a challenge. And then in doing so, if you're going to have that effective communication at the end of an engagement, you must understand the defender's perspective. You have to understand where they're coming from. You have to speak their language. We have a challenge with that when we're a bunch of cyber nerds out there trying to hack a network, break into a building, where we have to then communicate this to maybe a general who's used to commanding tanks, and trying to speak the same language and impress upon them why they need to pay attention and why what you're saying is important. This is the same in the corporate world, especially if you're doing penetration tests across a variety of organizations, different businesses. I've worked in health information security before, a number of other contract type jobs, government organizations too. And everywhere I go, it's a different language, a different culture. So you have to understand this. Remember, you get involved in this because you want to hack computers and do the fun things, but at the end of the day, if you don't communicate well, it's not going to work. And then, this is from somebody working for the National Security Agency. You can't have any secrets about what you did with your customer. You can't hold back. If you don't tell them exactly how you did something and what tools you used, down to the exact what we call TTPs, or tools, tactics, and procedures. If you don't let them know what that is, then there is no point in you doing this work because you're not helping them at all. And that's a very challenging thing. I'll tell you, throughout the Department of Defense, the red teams, there are a good number of them. Our tactics, tools, and procedures almost across the board are completely unclassified so that we can share them as much as we can. Otherwise, like I said, it doesn't do any good if you can't tell your customer what you did. It's very, very hard to do. You want to keep your secret. You want to be able to use whatever you did at your next customer, but if you're doing that, it's not going to be effective. And then finally, going back after the engagement. If you just go in, you kick down the door, you point and laugh at them like, yeah, we did all this stuff, you guys aren't any good, then you leave, that doesn't do anyone any good. That's not. You're forgetting that you're on their side. You're a network defense mission. You're part of their team. You're part of your customer's team at that time. And if you don't follow up, if you don't help them fix these things, then you're just going to come back a few years later and you can do the same exact thing, and there's nothing more disappointing. You know you have failed as a red team, as a penetration testing team, an outside consultant, however you want to put it, if you came back in and you find the same problems. That's not great. So to kind of get to what the meat of, I'm going to give a talk tomorrow where I'm going to go into a lot of these details. I'm going to give examples about engagements. I'm going to talk about actual real events. But for right now, just kind of want to summarize a little bit about what has given us problems. What can you do as a network defender? What can you do as an attacker in order to make them better? I'll tell you what really makes for a challenging engagement is, if we're going after a small network or a small organization, a small building, they're just simply easier to defend. It goes back to the human problem, really. It isn't even exactly the number of IP addresses and devices. It's more the attack surface, including the human element for social engineering, for initial access, gets much smaller. So in trying to attack a small network, that makes things very, very, very tough. And I spoke a little bit about the beginning. The big thing is culture. If you don't have a culture of network defense, if everyone isn't thinking about, who is this walking in the hallway? Why is this person here? I don't know this person. Why are they sitting at this computer? Ask them. It's a really, really hard thing to do. As people, we like to be nice to each other. We want to try to assist them. And if they're allowed to be there and they're doing the right thing, then assist them. The number of times I was able to integrate myself into an organization as an employee of theirs and work for sometimes weeks or months with them, and just having talked my way in and built a few relationships, it's a higher number than it should be. And that's all about culture. A different culture would have stopped me right at the beginning, got me caught. It would have been much tougher to stay and continue hacking their networks. Another thing is compartmentalization. This is something that truly makes network attackers, gives us a lot of problems. If we get one network, we get part of it, but we can't move around very much, can't laterally move into other areas, get to the actual critical data. That makes things very, very tough. That means that we sometimes have to go back out. Maybe we have to do some social engineering attack again. Maybe we have to phish again. Maybe we have to poison a file server. Anytime you're forcing an attacker to do those things, to kind of think outside that box, you're raising their signature. You're making us more nervous about these next attacks that we're going to do. While we're doing this, we're thinking the whole time they know we're going to get caught, whether we're in a building or in a network. Everything we see, we're thinking, oh no, they know. Well, if you compartmentalize your networks effectively, you can make our job much tougher. We have to cross more security boundaries, checkpoints, and it could be a real problem. Now, the strong working relationships at an organization, I can see that what we're talking about here is mostly about the relationship between the leadership and kind of the rank and file workers at an organization. The most challenging networks and organizations I've ever run across in the work of about 20 years of doing this has been when you see the leaders support and give the tools, training, education, and the right amount of staff to the people that are defending the network. Now that's a challenge in that it's easy to, the people who are defending the network always want more people, always want more money, always want more tools, they always want the new shiny thing. And then that's why that relationship has to go both ways. You need to have your actual rank and file network defenders focused on the mission and know what they really need to get that mission accomplished. And they need to have the trust of their leadership in order to assist them with that. And then what that'll do, if you build those strong working relationships, that'll go to and create that well-resourced, trained, and trusted security team. Some examples I'll hopefully be able to talk about tomorrow about exactly what that can do. I can go from one organization that doesn't have these two specific things right here. That's the reason they're on this slide together. And it's relatively easy. I can walk all over the place, go where I want, both in their network and in their buildings. And it's really no challenge at all. But if you have these two things right here, you're going to have a much better defense, both of your network and of your facilities, your corporate data. It's an incredibly important thing, and it's difficult to create this synergy. Because honestly, I think hiring is the hardest thing I've ever done. Trying to find the right people to join teams that I've led in order to conduct the mission. There's that level of trust that has to be there. And that's important, and both sides have a say in this, whether you're a first day network engineer or cybersecurity attacker, pen tester, or whether you're a seasoned pro and you're running these teams, you need to have that kind of relationship and that trust, or you're not going to be effective. Now, this is a little bit harder to solve. This is about engaging with your customer. So you can do all this work, you can do all the great things, and penetration testing teams, red teams, are typically very proud of what they do because quite honestly, it's very hard. But the thing they forget is it isn't as hard as defending an enterprise. That is much more difficult. I have to find one way in. I have to find one way into a building. I have to find one way into that network. But a network defender has to find absolutely all of them. And that is incredibly difficult. So at the end of the day, a really proud, happy, and successful penetration testing or red team show up to those out briefs, out products, however you're presenting the data and the information about your typically months of work that you've had. It isn't always very well received. And this is the most important part of your engagement, because if you blow this particular moment, then you are not going to get, that enterprise isn't going to get more secure. You're not going to make them better, and that's your only point for being there. So one thing is you can't make somebody care, some apathy. I can't beat that. If I show up and no one cares, then there's really nothing I can do to make them care. I can try to show them all the damage we could do maybe, but really that's difficult to get back that. And if your network security team is demonstrating that, that's a real problem. And then there's anger. I actually like a little bit. I like a little bit of emotion. I want to see people, they should be hurt by what we were able to accomplish, because that means they care. Because if you just show up with that apathy, then that doesn't make any difference. But if you show to me that you have a little bit of emotion, I'm going to invest more in trying to diffuse that anger and get on the same side as them, express that I agree, I'm mad too. I shouldn't have done these things. This is, let's go together and help. So turning that around is critically important. And if you notice, it's all about people. Then disbelief. I mean, some people just won't believe you. Sometimes you have to show them. That's why stimulation exercises are really important in our line of work. Trying to show and demonstrate what we did and how we did it. And I've got some stories I can tell about that tomorrow. About some of the stimulation exercises where we get overt. We have to show we're there, because if you hack a network correctly, you get in, you get out, you don't have, hopefully they never knew you were there. And so, well, we didn't see anything, you didn't know anything, and so that's not, sometimes you have to get their attention. So we'll do things called raising the noise, or we'll do stimulation exercise. They can be a lot of fun. However, you have to be very careful that they're not just going to make them too angry, but you can get them to care. And then misunderstanding. This is incredibly important. Again, communication is very hard. I specifically have taken some collegiate level communication courses in order to be able to more effectively understand that when you just say something, that doesn't mean that the receiver is receiving it. And if they are receiving it, do they understand the point you're trying to make, or are they kind of getting something else? And that's really what you have to study. I think that we have a lot of cyber smart people, and when you get really good at hacking a computer, you get really good at your job. That's a pretty narrow focus. You need to broaden yourself past just attacking the network, just being able to use the latest tools and figuring that out. That's important. You need to be able to do that. But then effectively communicating that so the network defenders can use your information and the work of your team in order to defend the network is really the bottom line end point there. And so with that, that's all I have for this particular moment. Again, I couldn't be happier to be here after attending many Black Hats and DEF CONs and many other conferences throughout the years. This is a real honor to be here. I want to thank the hosts, and I really thank all of you for listening to me talk a little bit. And if you take anything from this, you have all the tech, all the tools, and all of that's important, but those are tools. Without the mechanic, without knowing how to put that together and working together to defend your enterprise, your business, your campus, none of those things out there are going to be worthwhile. You have to have a team that knows how to use it. And I implore, if you're running an enterprise, get that adversarial perspective. Get somebody to come in and look at your network as a bad guy would, who has experience in doing that. And it's typically a pretty eye-opening experience if you're willing to expose yourself and your business in that way. And that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.